Okay, well, good afternoon and hello to all watching, and welcome to Cedarwood Faces. This is episode 8 of the conversation series that we're doing, and today we're speaking with Debra Green, author, speaker, and founder and director of ROC UK. As ever, the aim of these conversations, for those who've been following us along this journey, have been to really share a bit about the people and the organisations that are partnering and supporting Cedarwood Festival, both in 2021 and beyond. As usual, if there's any questions during the show or the conversation, feel free to ping them in the YouTube chat or in the email provided. And then, as usual, feel free to subscribe to all our content at the following channels at Cedarwood Festival, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, etc. Go crazy. But today, I'd love to welcome Debra to the show. So good to have you here with us, Debra.
Great to be with you, David. Really good. I've listened to some of these and it's been fantastic, and really looking forward to being part of it.
Great. Well, for the intrigue of our viewers, I know we're obviously everyone's dealing with being in isolation at the moment, and the world is slowly opening up, certainly in the UK now. But for the interest of our viewers, where on the planet are you calling in from? And give us a bit of insight into that.
Yeah, so I'm calling in from my hometown, which is Manchester, home city, where I was born and lived here most of my life. And it's a nice, well, reasonably nice day today, and not raining anywhere. That's the main thing. And yeah, I'm at home because I've been spending about 50% of my time working from home, as a lot of people have, and I've kind of got used to it. I didn't think I'd ever get used to working from home, but there's advantages and disadvantages. So working from home, I occasionally pop down to the office, which is about 20 minutes away from here. And yeah, so Manchester's where I'm here today, where I'm
amazing. Great, fun little thing. Maybe before we start, is there anything that you've kind of got used to, or that has been like, oh, that's really nice now that you've been working from home this whole time? Is there are there little things that you're just like, yeah, that's a really nice bit about working from home?
Yeah, I think it's the flexibility of not being in an office. I've got a nice view out of the window, which is of a garden with flowers, which I don't get at the office. I've got the coffee machine through there, which we do get at the office, but it's not quite the same. And I've got people that, bring me things to eat. People, my husband, should say my husband. I've got people. No, I haven't.
Unless you've got a catering team that you've brought in.
I've got a catering team. No. Yeah, just go out. You can just go out for a walk. You can just be a bit more flexible. I've got a comfortable chair.
Yeah, there's definitely things that are, changing views, isn't there, about kind of what it's been like. I think some definite benefits I've found, a different pace of life anyway, just being able to prioritize certain things. But it is great to have you on, Debra, and great that you're comfortable before we kick off. So for those who don't know you, Debra, and ROC, which obviously you're working with and founded, let's kick off with just like an overview, kind of 30,000 feet picture view of kind of your background. You mentioned you were born in Manchester and you've lived there for a while, but your kind of background, your life, a bit about your family. Just let's talk about that, and then we'll dig down in some of the key areas to do with ROC, the ministry, and then Cedarwood as well.
Yeah, sure. So a bit about me. I was born in Manchester, went to university in Manchester, wanted to train to be a teacher, secondary school teacher. I was into amateur dramatics, so I've been in a lot of plays and theatrical productions, which not many people know. And I have, became a teacher in English and drama. But then shortly after that, I became a Christian just after I got married. And that really changed a little bit the course of my life. I quickly got a call to go into ministry. We led a massive big youth church in Altrincham for many years. And then we ended up going to lead a church called Ivy Church, still there, we're still part of it. And we started to lead that church. We also, at the same time as leading that church, felt the call of God to lead a citywide ministry of bringing all the churches together to pray. And that was the precursor to ROC. It was those 7 years of prayer. I've got 4 kids, 7 grandchildren. I've written a few books, and I am the founding director of Redeeming Our Communities, which is 17 years old. It is a community engagement charity, people of goodwill working together towards safer, kinder communities. I'm part of the leadership of Spring Harvest. I'm just joined the board of the Evangelical Alliance. I'm just listing all the things off.
List it out. We're gonna come to some of them a bit more later on, which we'll dig down a bit. But that's great. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, what an intro. Thanks for sharing that, Deborah. So you were born and you've spent most of your life in Manchester, but you have, I can imagine, traveled a lot, UK and internationally for the stuff that you've been involved with. So just for our viewers, obviously one of the big things that often kind of leaders don't get asked about on stage, and maybe this is a chance to share a bit more about it, is kind of how you came to know Jesus yourself. It's not, normally when leaders are speaking, you're often talking on a thematic or, exposition. You don't get a chance to really just share that. So maybe in a few minutes, if you want to just to share that, it'd be lovely for our viewers just to, get some context on that, Deborah.
Yeah, so I wasn't brought up in a Christian home. I did occasionally go to Sunday school as a child, but my parents were not really people of faith. And I found myself in teenage years feeling like there was something missing. A lot of people say this, don't they? It's like this searching, this hungering for something, but you're not quite sure what it is. I got married in 1980, and at our wedding ceremony was when God just broke in. So it's quite a powerful story, really, because we weren't Christians when we got married. We didn't really even understand that kind of dynamic, but we did get married in a church. And it was as we were singing one of the hymns, 23rd Psalm, "The Lord's my shepherd," all you could say is that a presence came, and we now know that is the presence of the Holy Spirit. And I thought it was just me that was experiencing it, but when I talked to my husband later that day, he said he experienced it as well. And it was like just God showed up, and he sort of said, "I'm looking, you might think you're looking for me, but I'm actually looking for you here." And 6 months later became a Christian.
Amazing. And was that Frank as well, your husband? Was that kind of a joint thing, or was it part of that?
It was a gap. So I came first, and my dad actually became a Christian. So my dad and I probably both became Christians at the same time, started attending church. And then Frank was a battle to get him in across the line. It was arguments. It was very interesting story. But 3 months after I became a Christian, he became a Christian as well. Not sure we could have survived it otherwise, but I know a lot of people have struggles with their partners. They're not Christians, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about, praying for people in that situation, because it can be quite hard. But so with 3 months later, he became a Christian too. So that's been fantastic.
That's amazing. And obviously since then you've been, working as a team in all these different aspects. We're going to come back to, I know there's one of the books that you've written together, which would be great to hear about in a second as well. But as we kick off into the kind of ministry aspect, obviously life is a ministry, but the specific areas that you've worked in, Deborah, ROC, we're going to hear a bit about that now. We've heard of obviously redeeming our arts as well, City Links. These are all areas that you've worked in. And so I wonder if you could just give people a bit more detailed intro into ROC and what are the kind of key areas and projects that you're working in, because it is far reaching from what I've seen.
Thank you. The real foundation of ROC is prayer. And that's why I've written, like you say, a couple of books, City Changing Prayer, Mountain Moving Prayer, because it really tells the story of how we were moved to do what we do now. I think prayer is a powerful first step. Prayer is action. It's a form of action, but it's about that relationship that you have with with the Lord, that where he can download ideas and put things on your heart, which you can then respond to in terms of community transformation. So we led a prayer movement in Manchester for 7 years. And in that time, we had we got up to like 200 churches that we partnered with on that prayer movement over 7 years. And we started praying for things like education, health, business, the police and crime, young people and isolation, and some of the stuff that we're now doing in terms of community transformation, like the arts. We prayed for the BBC for 4 years, for example. It all came out of that place of prayer. And as we were praying, God sort of got our attention around some of the things that we needed to follow up on. And that then led to the launch of ROC and led to the launch of us doing Redeeming Our Communities. Definitely prayer. And I always say to people, that's a really good place to start, is pray for your community, go out prayer walking, pray for the police, pray for the retailers, pray for the people in the NHS, pray about what's going on around you in the community, some of your community needs. And that then just takes you into this sort of whole sphere of community transformation and what does that look like, and reaching our nation. So ROC is the direct result of those 7 years of prayer.
That's awesome. So that because ROC was formed in 2004, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
But before then there was the City Links, which was that a charity or was that a business?
Yes, City Links was a charity that we set up, and the reason that came about was because I was involved in something called Festival Manchester 20 years ago, working with Andy Hawthorne, and you probably know those guys. And he said to me, look, Deborah, I want you to be the church liaison officer of Festival Manchester, go out and recruit churches. And I set myself the target of getting 500 churches to be involved with Festival Manchester. I actually got 519, so I smashed the target.
Yes.
And I got the churches, and we started to educate the churches around social action. And we did 400 social action projects across the city. It was incredible. We had 55,000 people at Heaton Park. We had Louise Palau, and it was amazing. But when that festival finished, what happened was that other cities started coming to me and saying, how do we do this social transformation? How do we do this social action? How do we do this prayer? So that's why I started City Link. So one city can say to another city, these are the ways that we work together and we can learn from one another. And within City Links, we had Redeeming the Arts, Redeeming Our Communities, and all these different things. And it was really just that we realised it isn't just cities, it's about villages, towns, it's about smaller communities, neighbourhoods. And City Links didn't really carry that for us. So we felt Redeeming Our Communities was the vehicle that God wanted to use to convey. It's about all the different communities.
Amazing.
So we sort of merged it into Redeeming Our Communities, and that's been the thing that's been at the forefront. We started in Manchester because I think you've got to start somewhere.
Yep.
We had this negative nickname, Gunchester. So we had this kind of bad reputation of guns and violence and drugs and young people, getting involved with the crime. And I just thought, as a Christian, I can't live in a city and not have an impact on its credibility and its reputation. So we started praying into that and working with the police to see crime reduced. And that's really the start of ROC. How it started was working with the police to look at Gunchester, and then Liverpool asked us to launch there, then Birmingham, and then it just started going national. And it's still very much about reducing crime and having safer communities. But we know that links in with so many other themes, like children who have been taken into care, for example, are more likely to get involved in crime. Children who are excluded from school are more likely to get involved in gangs. So it's a lot about childhood traumas and childhood adverse circumstances that can lead to the crime later in life. So it's actually about healing the whole of society and about bringing the whole church together to address those community needs, whether that's loneliness, isolation, crime. So it kind of came together like that, really.
That's amazing. So it's really looking at all the areas of society that are, crying out essentially. And obviously, you're a Christian, we're Christians, and we're passionate about seeing the gospel, reach to the nations and our nation. But in terms of, I guess, so many people will be reached by actually seeing it through action, whether it's through the policing or whether it's through, I know there's the food bank and the Message, I know, are doing great things with the food groceries at the moment. There's so many different issues which we can be hands and feet, I guess, and that's an amazing to hear that the way you've kind of channeled that through that.
It's like meeting people's felt needs, whether that's community groceries, whether that's food bank, whether that's, we do after school youth clubs called ROC cafes, we do garden transformation projects, we do things like family mentoring schemes. Because if a family is really struggling, especially over this last year, COVID related has made it a lot worse. They just need someone to talk to. They need a person to walk through that with them. And if people experience that help, whether that's putting a meal on a table or whether that's helping them with children who are getting into difficulty, they're more likely to hear the gospel through that kind of felt need. In fact, our mentors project, 63% of our mentees join a Christian community. Amazing. So that's massive. So it's like they walk with you, that mentor walks with that family, and then that mentor is a Christian, and it's going to shine through, especially if you're helping people with their felt needs. So I think this is a really big challenge and an opportunity for the church.
It is. Deborah, you mentioned there about the gun crime. I know that's one of the big issues in Manchester, this Gunchester. Is one of the things I know that we've talked about off air recently is about this knife crime situation. And obviously this is a UK wide thing. However, there are hotspots, as in the UK where that is more prevalent. So talk to us a bit about the kind of knife crime and how you're working with the police on that, and specifically, I know that someone within your family has developed a song, and maybe you could just share a bit about that and the story behind it.
Yeah, sure. So there were 46,000 incidences of knife crime in the year running up to March 2020 across the UK. Absolutely huge issue. And it isn't just to do with loss of life, as tragic as that is, but also the fear associated with young people carrying knives, potential injuries, and the impact that has on families. So there was a young boy sadly lost his life last week in East London, age 14, to knife crime. But the double tragedy is the fact that the perpetrators of the crime were also aged 14. Age 14, carrying a knife, using a knife. And this was unheard of when I was growing up. It's a relatively new thing. So crime changes and society changes, and we need to adapt. So we'd got in touch with this, and we were running a big community event last week in Reading in partnership with Thames Valley Police. And one of the inspectors said to me, we've seen this video produced in Humberside addressing trying to get young people not to carry knives. And they said, do you think we could do something in Reading? And I said, yeah, I think we can get something done. And quickly went to my son, Josh, who had worked on the Humberside project. He's an evangelist. He used to work with the Message Trust and was in a band called 1224 and now in a band called Social Beings. And I knew he had this really on his heart because he was part of the Get Rid of Gunchester campaign that we did many years ago. So I said, Josh, can you just pray about this? So he did, and he wrote a song called Born to Fly, which is about telling young people, put down your knife, you're not meant to carry a knife, you're actually born to fly, you've got a destiny, you've got a purpose, God has got a plan for your life, and you don't want to lose your life, you want to actually live your life because you've got a future and a hope. So he wrote this song, and he put it together, and he went down to Reading to film it with a film crew. So we had Reading, it was filmed at Abbey Ruins, and we had Reading Football Club, and it was all Reading, related. And we put it together, and it's just taken off. And I'm really moved by it because when he was younger, when he was about 17, he did get into trouble with the police a little bit himself, and had this major encounter with God in a police cell when he was in trouble one time. He was just locked up for the weekend, and he'd done something wrong, and he had a big encounter with God in that place. And then he's now 13 years later written this song and is now out ministering to young people, saying, you know what, God's got a different plan for your life. So we've had about 2.2 thousand views already on YouTube. It was only launched mid last week.
Wow,
and
awesome.
It's going out on the media channels this weekend. So we're really excited because we want to reach young people with this message.
Yeah.
Put down your knives, live your life, and find out what your future actually is.
Yeah. And Deborah, just kind of digging into that a bit more, maybe for our viewers, some of the viewers in certainly the Northeast, I mean, our network does span kind of the UK, but predominantly is in the north of England. And in terms of knife crime, maybe some people aren't too familiar with it in the areas that they're based, in it probably for a good situation. But maybe for those who are not too familiar with, people have seen it on the news, but maybe close to home haven't experienced it. What would you say the core reasons that a 14-year-old would be carrying a knife? It's for some people it's just hard to imagine.
And sadly, and this isn't just about crime, this is about a trend. So one boy in Northamptonshire told me, I'm the only boy in my class not carrying a knife. And we know it's as young as the ages of 8 and 9 in some parts of Belfast. Recently, there's been a report. So this isn't just to do with crime, because the knife might not be used to commit a crime, but it's predominantly to do with fear or fashion. So I'm carrying a knife because I'm afraid that somebody else might be carrying one and I might need to defend myself. But it's now become a fashion. So it's like a trend to be carrying a knife. And of course, if you have got a knife on your person, you're more likely to use it, or you might be tempted to use it in a situation, and then you might find yourself in trouble. So there are young people in school today, right across the country, not just in the deprived areas, not just in the big cities, carrying a knife. And it's a growing problem. And it might be gang related, it might be drug related, it might be more sinister, or it may just be a fashion accessory.
Yeah, it's very insightful to hear that, Deborah, and I'm sure many of our listeners that'll be very new to them. And it's something we definitely need to pray for and raise awareness about. And it's great just on the back of this video that's been done. We've shared that, I know, through our network, and we will continue to talk about that. And so moving on to a bit of a lighter topic. I know it's serious, but it's important. But in terms of you're very passionate about ecumenical work from when you started doing the City of Links to the message to other initiatives you've done. Been involved with More Than Gold, bringing all these communities together. I think that's amazing, and that's very much in line with the Cedarwood Festival vision to unite the church in the north of England, and we think that's very important. But tell us, a bit more about some of the other events you've been involved with ecumenically. More Than Gold being one of them, and the National Prayer Days. I know that you've been involved with as well, and other festivals as well. So maybe just expand on that.
Yeah, sure. So I've just actually been chatting this morning with a leadership academy in Staffordshire, and talking that the guy was saying that Commonwealth Games coming to Birmingham, and is there anything we could do around that? And I'm a big believer in taking some of the big sort of national festivals that are happening, or big, things like Commonwealth Games, and making those into an opportunity for outreach. So we did a huge event at the Velodrome back in just prior to the Commonwealth Games being in Manchester in the early 2000s. And we hired the Velodrome. We had Chris Hoy going around on his with the Olympic cyclists as people were coming in, because they were training for the Commonwealth Games. We interviewed the chief exec of the Commonwealth Games. We talked about hospitality, and we talked about the weather being good for when the athletes' families were visiting our city, because we do tend to get a bit of rain in Manchester. And we just had this incredible event, and it was all about sport, and it was all about celebration. So it isn't always about sort of serious social issues that I was talking about before. And incredible things happened as a result of that event. One of them being that the chief exec of the Commonwealth Games rang me the next day after the event that we did at the Velodrome, and asked me if I could get 300 people to sing at the opening ceremony of the Commonwealth Games with Russell Watson. So I was like, I thought it was a strange request, but I just said yes to her, put the phone down, and thought, how are we going to do it? But as soon as you go out and say to churches, oh, have you got anybody that would like to sing in the choir with Russell Watson? You're suddenly inundated with everybody who wants to do it. And
I can imagine that. Everyone's a singer. Everyone's a singer now.
Yeah, everyone sings in church, don't they? Well, we used to be able to. So that was a really fantastic story. We also had a really big event at the Echo Arena in Liverpool, where we hired the Echo Arena. It had just been built. We had 5,000 people. We had a choir. We had Andrew Lansell, who's an actor from The Bill. I interviewed him. We had the Chief Constable of Merseyside Police, Bernard Hogan-Howe. We had a children's choir from the school where Rhys Jones lost his life. And we just had this amazing, incredible event, which really was about addressing some of the needs across Merseyside. Then we did the national launch at the NEC in Birmingham, which was part of Trumpet Call, World Press Centre Trumpet Call event. We had 7,000 people. That was awesome. We just looking at what can we do as community. I quite like events, so I'm looking forward to your festival, because I like events, because I think we do, like you mentioned, unity. We do need to come together and work together, and you can't really express unity without having some kind of gathering. So come together and see what the giftedness is in the church, and how to release that into society.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think I loved hearing there about the stuff with sports and all that. And I'm passionate about sports myself, rugby, tennis, you name it, athletics. And I remember being involved with the Engage 2015 campaign with the Rugby World Cup in the UK when that happened. And More Than Gold as well. So it is amazing how, all these areas we can really touch into society with the message of Jesus Christ and reach people. It is amazing. So a bit of an interesting question here, Deborah, for our listeners. What would you say is the favorite part of your job that you're kind of privileged to do as leader of ROC UK and all the other things you're doing? What would you say is the kind of the thing that you enjoy the most from that?
I think what I enjoy the most is we do an event called a ROC Conversation, where we travel. When we used to be able to travel, we travel to a city or a town and we bring everybody together under one roof. It's church mixed in with unchurched. It's got, the civic leaders involved, the schools, everybody. We come together and we look at what are the great things about this community, celebrate the good, where are the gaps, and then we come up with solutions to community problems like loneliness, for example, mental health, and what can we do together to achieve those goals. So it is a unity thing, but it's a sort of sharing a vision and sharing ideas. It's like an incubator of ideas and then pushing out through into action. And we've done 250 of them in every type of community around the UK. We've done some in Scotland, we've done Northern Ireland, we've done Wales, we've done England. And I love those. That's the favourite part of my job. I have to think on my feet. I like seeing everybody together. I like drawing out different people's gifts and skills through interviewing civic leaders, just seeing ideas emerge and seeing that community connected. I think connecting people together is probably like one of my biggest passions.
Yeah, that is phenomenal. So that over 200, you're saying over 200 of these things on tour. That sounds like a dream. Well, I'd love to come and join maybe one of them in the future. We'd love to have some of our team come and be part of one of them when we can get out and about on the road again.
We've just booked 2 live events. So we're doing Bristol at the end of September and we're doing Worcester in October. So those we've just stepped out in faith and said we are physically coming to these places and we're just gonna get everybody there. So I'll invite you along.
Amazing.
They are fantastic events.
That's awesome. Yeah, and in terms of like size, I guess they range in size from city to city, Deborah.
Yes, the largest one we had was 400 people at Franklin Gardens in Northamptonshire a couple of years ago. And the smallest I'd say would be about 100. So it can be quite small or it could be really large, and it can just be a small area, geographical area, like even one council estate or one small pocket, or it could be like a city or a county. They all work, but they all have a slightly different dynamic. It just depends on who's commissioned us and what they want us to achieve. So we have to go with the challenge that comes with the commissioning.
I think that's awesome that you don't just jump into a city unwanted. You go with an invitation. I think that is a real important thing with any aspect of ministry, that we do it kind of understanding the needs of and the work that's already going on in that area. I think that's really amazing that you're doing that, and really excited to be part of one of them moving forward. But moving on to a kind of a topic that everyone is talking about in this whole in this last 9 to 10 months. But as everyone listening will know, the reason we're doing these conversations online is because we are not able to meet in the person, in the flesh. So we're in the middle of a pandemic. We're hopefully towards the end of it, but we're thinking positively about it. And Deborah, I wonder if you could just share a bit with our listeners, kind of how ROC as an organisation has kind of navigated through this last 10, 12 months, and how you found it really, from your staff team to you personally as well.
Yeah, it's mixed, isn't it? I mean, we're a community engagement charity, and that has been severely restricted over this last 12 months. We did our last live conversation in Woking on March the 12th. Then we hit up against the pandemic. But we'd already done 17 conversations from January through to March the 12th, 2020. Wow. So it was still almost our biggest year, even though we were only operational for 3 months. So that was incredible. And we've had to reinvent, we've had to reimagine, we've had to be innovative, and we've inevitably had to do a lot of stuff online. So we did the ROC conversation last week in Reading online, 225 people on Zoom. That was a challenge. We've done our telephone mentoring scheme online. We've done all our trainings online. So that's all the way that we've had to change in this last year. And we've been able to get some COVID related funding for doing some of those new innovations, because a lot of the funders have funded, have had COVID emergency funding. So we've benefited from some of that. And we've benefited from the government job retention scheme. So some of our staff have been on furlough, some of our staff have been working from home. A lot of our staff have had to homeschool because they've got kids school aged.
Tough, yeah.
Which has been really tough when you're trying to run a meeting and you've got little kids and dogs and cats and all sorts in the background, like you see on Zooms. It's really, really funny.
It's like a show and tell time. I've been on some Zooms and it's like the focus of the meeting has been the animals on the meeting.
Yeah, the animals. You suddenly see the cat's tail in front of someone's head and think, what is going on there? But I haven't had to have that particular challenge, but some of my staff have, and yeah, we've come through it. We tried our best to help others as well and advise others. And I'd say one of the benefits that we've had is because I've been a little bit less busy in the last year than I was in the previous year, I've been able to do other things and spend time encouraging people and spend time talking to people, which I was too busy to do before. So I've got a bit of a, been able to do some new things, which have been great.
That's awesome. So in terms of just touching back on, just kind of wrapping up the conversation part of talking about ROC, what are some of the other ministries that you partner with? I know obviously ROC UK is a ministry in its own right, but you've talked about the police, which is a secular organisation that you're working with. What are some of the other organisations and ministries that you would partner with? Cedarwood being one of them, obviously, but are there others you can talk and share with us?
Yeah, I did. I have been privileged to speak at a lot of the conferences and festivals. Like I spoke at New Wine last year, the year before, I think it was now, and I'm on the leadership team of Spring Harvest, so I'm very involved in speaking at Spring Harvest, and of course we had to do that online as well. We're hoping next year we will be back at Butlins and Harrogate Convention Centre. I have been involved with the Evangelical Alliance. I am involved with that. So those kinds of networks, if you like, Christian networks and festivals, plus the big partnerships that we have with the police and crime commissioners, that people have been hopefully out voting today, because that is the election of those local councils and local police and crime commissioners and mayors. We work a lot with those. We work with the fire service, we work with the government, the NHS, the Home Office, all sorts of different partnerships. We're doing a lot of work at the moment with schools as well, doing youth surveys with schools, with looking at what issues are affecting young people. We have got a partnership with the Neighbourhood Prayer Network. So I was meeting with their leadership team earlier on this week. Christian Police Association, Faith and Police Together, Christian Nightlife Initiatives, which is the umbrella for Street Angels, Festival Angels. We have to get them along to Cedarwood Festival.
Yeah, it is amazing hearing all these partnerships, Deborah, seeping through all areas of society. It really is amazing, and I think we've got to be. I think it's just great that you guys are open to that and not being restrictive of this is where we're working, but actually going. We need to be open to people who are everyone who needs us essentially, and everyone needs the gospel. So it is awesome. Absolutely. It is awesome to hear that. So you've written a number of books, Deborah. Obviously, one with your husband. Is there any? Can you just share a bit about those books and maybe just tell people where they can get them and stuff?
Yeah, so we wrote a book called City Changing Prayer, and it was really Frank who wrote it. He's a better writer than I am. I'm more on the speaking side of things, but we worked together on it. So I sort of put the timeline together and the stories and things like that, and some of the inspiration, and he put the theology. He's got a Master of Arts in Theology degrees, and very clever, very, trained at Manchester University in theology. So he put some of the structures together, and I put some of the stories and inspiration in there. So I think we were good teamwork on that. And then wrote Rock Your World, which is about community transformation. You can rock your world in your communities, and that tells a lot of stories about some of the things that we've seen happen around the UK. And then more recently, I've written another book called Mountain Moving Prayer with Dave Roberts, and the two of us, Gavin Calver gave us, and the Evangelical Alliance gave us a really good endorsement for that. And we launched that at Spring Harvest in 2019 when we took the theme of prayer. So that book is about prayer, but it's about how prayer relates to transformation. And with Mountain Moving Prayer, we've done a study booklet, which is aimed at church small groups, cell groups or house groups. And it gives them 10 weeks worth of study around each of the chapters in the book. It deals with things like spiritual warfare, deals with personal prayer, deals with partnership working. How do you get people to work together? The whole unity thing. And so that little booklet, we've got an offer on at the moment where if you buy Mountain Moving Prayer, you get that booklet free as a package. And that is available on our ROC website, roc.uk.com/shop. So all our resources are in there.
Right.
We've also done USB stick, which has got a little video of each of the chapters of me introducing those. That's all in our website shop.
That's awesome. We'll put the links to those in the description to this video, so people can kind of get in touch with those things. That's really cool. Yeah. So we've had a question come in, just wanting to understand, what would you say has been your most moving testimonial from the ministry during the time of the pandemic? A story I know you've talked about the knives situation, Deborah, but what's been the most? Do you have a kind of story of hope maybe that you've experienced from that's come out of ROC through the pandemic that you could share with us?
Yeah, I mean, we've set up these telephone mentor schemes in lots of divisions. We've done something called COVID kindness in a lot of our community action groups. But one story that I love is we have got a project in Ballysillan in Northern Ireland, and that is a whole story in itself, how we've managed to be working Northern Ireland over this last 10 years with all the politics and all the tensions and paramilitarism and all of that kind of thing, and what we've seen happen there has been incredible. But one story from Ballysillan, we did our ROC conversation in Ballysillan 2 years ago in one of the local primary schools, and the local Methodist church leader came forward to lead it, and he's been leading it for the last 2 years, ROC Ballysillan. And he started the telephone mentor scheme, which put him in contact with a lot of families across the community, and they've seen loads of fantastic things happen as a result of that. But just recently, they visited a baby bank, which is running in a place called Glengormley, one of the neighbouring places. And they were so inspired by this baby bank that they went back to Ballysillan and just put a message out on Facebook. Do you think anybody in the community would like us to run a baby bank? Is there a need for something like that? In one day, they had 300 people sign up for a Facebook group for a baby bank. And his whole church is now filled with baby equipment, so that you can't even get in through the door. So he's got prams, he's got buggies, he's got baby clothes, he's got baby food, he's got milk, he's got everything, all in his church that have all been delivered by the local community. And then people can come, with new families, or they've just had a child, and it's a bit like a food bank, but it's baby equipment and baby clothes, and they're coming, and all of a sudden he's got this huge community. He was only leading a small church, and now he's got this huge community that are all relating. And I spoke to him last week, and he just said, Deborah, I'm going to need a big place because it's just growing so fast. And they're looking at him as like their sort of spiritual leader, even though they're not Christians yet. And then he said to me last week, God's really given me this idea. He said, I'm into cookery and I love cooking. And he said, I'm going to start a bread church. And I went, what is a bread church, Alan? And he said, well, bread church is where we invite people who like cooking, come down, meet with us. We're gonna bake 2 loaves of bread each. You have one that you just eat together as a community, and you give the other loaf of bread away. But when you give that loaf of bread away, you invite that person to come to bread church next week. And you're like, how good is that? That's innovation right there. Yeah. You've got a bread church, you've got a baby bank, and that's literally happened in the last few weeks.
Love that. Absolutely love that idea. Phenomenal. Yeah, no, I mean, it's so biblical, isn't it? In its roots, the Jesus and the amount of links he does to being the bread of life and bread physically in itself as well. It's amazing. Well, it's a phenomenal story, and I'm sure our listeners will be definitely inspired by that one. Thanks for sharing that, Deborah. So just as we're moving on now, I want to just touch on Cedarwood Festival before we kind of finish up. It would be rude not to, based on this conversation. But Cedarwood Festival, as you know, Deborah, is going to be still going ahead this year in a different form than it will do in 2022. But we are still going ahead, and there'll be more news that's going to be announced about that very shortly for our listeners and people online. We've had questions coming in quite a lot about that. There will be news coming soon. But one thing that we're really excited to share is that Deborah will be at the festival and will be speaking alongside a whole host of other speakers and contributors. We're very excited about that, and looking to hear what you're going to bring to that. But Deborah, we've touched on it a bit before, but in your opinion, what do you think festivals, specifically festivals, bring to the church that maybe a normal a church gathering on a Sunday doesn't bring, and other communities don't bring? What do you think of festivals specifically? We think it's essential, and it's a beautiful picture of the church in a different sphere. But what are your thoughts on that, having been involved in so many yourself?
Yeah, I think there's a massive future for festivals and gatherings of that kind. And I think part of the reason is that many of us probably go to smaller or medium-sized churches. That's certainly true for what we find at Spring Harvest. And if we're in a smaller church, there's fewer resources, and we don't often get access to maybe some of the speakers that you could hear at a festival. You don't always get access to some of the music and the worship bands and the artists. We've talked about that you could possibly get at a festival. And we don't always have access to some of the media kind of things that you can do at a festival, which you can't maybe do in local church. So local church is fantastic for us to be embedded with people in that local community and be grassroots and live amongst those people. But a festival is where it's the big gathering. It can have a different excitement factor than it has maybe in a smaller gathering on a Sunday. And I think it's the place where I've been most impacted by the Holy Spirit, because where you have lots of people gathered together, the spiritual presence of what the Holy Spirit is doing is on a different scale. And it's like, wow, we're here, it's like an open heaven, isn't it? You have these encounters at these festivals that you probably maybe don't have that level of the same kind of intensity at a smaller local gathering. So I think you need both But I think the festival is the annual thing or the summer thing that you look forward to, and you're outdoors, and hopefully the weather's nice, and it's just a bit of a wow factor. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I think one thing I'll be sharing more about this at the festival in itself. But one thing we've really found is that people, and my experience in festivals as well, is that people come together, maybe who wouldn't have come to a church, because there's other things going on, cafes, worship, music, that they may be drawn to. But then we see a great increase in the surge of church growth as an impact of that, because people then want somewhere to then do their daily and their daily walk. They then find a church, and we really, as a festival, we are part of the church, but we're not a church. And I think one of the big things is we want to facilitate, people finding churches that are going to be suitable for them, and places where daily and weekly they can grow and mature in their faith. And part of one of the core verses of the festival is Psalm 104:16, talking about the Lord abundantly watering the seeds of Lebanon that He planted, for deep roots, being deeply rooted in that. And so that's something we're really passionate about, and it'd be really great to hear your thoughts on that, Deborah, as well.
I think yes, I think you can invite somebody to a festival a little bit more easily than you can maybe just invite them sometimes to local church, where you're not really quite sure what's going to happen, what people are going to do, what people are going to say. And also it's more difficult for the person that you're inviting, because they feel more exposed because it's a smaller gathering. Mm-hmm. But at a bigger festival, someone can come along and just experience it, not without that pressure. Yeah. And I think they then can have this encounter, and then, as you say, they can hopefully give their lives to Jesus and join in a local church.
Yeah, indeed. It's that, they don't feel like they've got a spotlight on them as the 1 in 20 newcomers that week.
Everybody looks to the back of the room when they walk in, and they all watch you walk to your seat. Yeah. It's not like that at a festival. It's just it's an easier experience for someone.
Well, for us, they'll be sat on hay bales, and they'll be enjoying some interesting chats. So that'll be very different, I think, to what they're going to get. But as we kind of wrap, Deborah, really want to say thanks for taking the time to chat today. Festivals and events are going to look very different in 2021, and there are many that are going to be going ahead as well. We look forward to you being a part of it. Before we do wrap, are there any? We always ask our guests this question: is there anything we can be praying for the ministry of ROC UK that you'd like to share with kind of the people listening? And we'll gladly pray into those things.
I think praying for our Born to Fly video, and that becoming what we want to do is try and get that into every secondary school, so that young people can hear that message. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We are looking at talking with people at the moment, potential sponsors for that. So praying for that sponsorship. We have got our ROC conversation in Rugby on the 19th of May, which will be online, but praying into that. Coming out of this sort of lockdown, that we can get back up and running in terms of travelling. So I'm doing my first travel on the 18th of May, going down to Nuneaton in person, in a car. I'm quite excited about that. And just getting back on the road and getting back, with some of the things that we like to do, to meet people face to face.
That's awesome. Well, we will be praying for you and the ministry in that area, and safe travels in all that. But in terms of today's conversation, that is a wrap for this episode, Cedarwood Faces. Thank you to our guest Deborah for joining us today. To find out more about ROC UK and the work that they do across the UK, links will be in the description, and will all be in this post the live conversation. Finally, to all our listeners, subscribers, Festival Network, and beyond for joining us. We look forward to next time. But until then, stay safe and God bless.
God bless.
Great. That's wrapped.